Good afternoon, members, committee directors. It is July 9 at 3:40 p.m. and I am here in person at the AVA conference room. Welcome. It is, please take roll, right?
Director Murata. Director Kang.
Hi, here.
Director Del Contancio. Director Del Contancio. You're muted.
Oh, I apologize.
No worries.
Here.
Director Brown.
Present.
Director Sakakera.
Here.
Chair Core.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thanks for establishing quorum. We can go to public comment. Any members of the public in the room?
There are no members of the public with their hand raised.
Okay. No members online?
No members online.
All right, we can go on to item number 3, which is approval of the minutes from May 8th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Director Sakakera. Any seconds?
Second.
What's that?
We're gonna Brown. Member Brown just
Okay,
seconded.
thank
the
you,
motion.
Member Brown. I did not see that on the screen. So motion by Director Sakakera and seconded by Director Brown. We'll take vote.
Yes. Director Murata. Director Kang. Director Kang. Director Del Contancio.
Yes.
Director Kang, sorry.
Hi, yes.
Okay, Director Del Contancio.
Aye.
Director Brown.
Aye.
Director Sakakera.
Aye.
Chair Core.
Yes.
The minutes are moved.
Thank you. We will go on to item number 4, compliance period procurement methodology, informational item presented by.
This will be Izzy online, but before we jump into this, I just wanted to make a quick note that item 5, the administrative procurement policy item, we're gonna pull that from the agenda. So that was agendized a little bit prematurely, so not ready to go with that one. So we'll probably move that forward in September.
Making sure of that.
All right. Hello, everyone. There we go. Thanks. My name is Izzy Carson. I am on the Power Resources team here at AVA. I manage the carbon free and rec portfolio. And I'll be walking through compliance period procurement methodology. Next slide. So this was introduced previously. The board preliminarily approved this concept in the recent 25 to 26 budget at the June board meeting. This presentation, I'll be providing some implementation details on some different scenarios. We'll be looking for feedback from the FAP on a recommendation that we will then be bringing to the board. This presentation will review some procurement challenges, compliance period methodology that already exists with our PS program and that we already comply with, some benefits to compliance period, and then finally some different scenarios for consideration. Next slide. So this visual on the right here, it's really for illustrative purposes only, but it's intended to reflect the band between the minimum and the maximum generation that we can expect from projects in our portfolio over time. So the guaranteed energy production, or GEP, which is the blue line in this visual, is the minimum that a project is contractually allowed to deliver to us, and the expected energy, or the EE, is the maximum possible expected. The GEP term is included in AVA's pro forma. It's defined as the expected energy, which is multiplied by a specific percentage based on technology. So 85% for solar or 75% for wind. So for example, if we had a resource that was contracted for 100,000 megawatt hours, a solar resource for 100,000 megawatt hours for a given year, the GEP for that particular resource would be at 85,000, and we would expect somewhere between that 85,000 and the 100,000 for that particular year. When there's only a couple of projects, that band between the min and max is manageable, and that's kind of what you see on the left side of that visual. It's not very much space between the two, but over time, and as AVA enters into more long-term PPAs that are contingent and from variable resources, the wider that band and the greater potential for over or under procurement. And that's kind of what you're seeing if you move from left to right in that visual, that's just a representation over time of additional resources that are in our portfolio. So those energy fluctuations, they can be attributed to weather patterns, load changes, project delays, outages, market conditions. There's really a number of different factors that contribute to the uncertainty and growing uncertainty that we have to account for. Just to give you kind of a reference point, for 2024 specifically, that band was about 13% total. So it's a pretty significant amount of uncertainty that we need to manage. It becomes more challenging the more resources that we have in the portfolio. Next slide.
Izzy, one quick point I want to make on that is you specifically
Sure.
call out wind and solar, just for people's awareness. This methodology is broadly applied to any of the clean energy that would procure renewables or large hydro. Solar and wind tend to be the two specific resources that tend to be more variable, so those are specifically called out here. Something like geothermal is a fairly small proportion of our portfolio and doesn't have the same level of variability, but certainly this broader concept of compliance period certainly does still apply and inclusive of geothermal.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so here we have the California compliance period methodology that's already in place. This concept's been around for many, many years. We already have to adhere to it as part of the Renewable Portfolio Standard, or RPS program. And essentially, each compliance period is a period of 3 to 4 years that has a fixed target. But because compliance is not based on an individual year, it provides flexibility for management of those variable resources over time. So, for example, you could have a resource that is scheduled to have a commercial operation date that comes online on time as it's expected. It could have great generation that year. We could also have a terrific water year. Hydro resources are doing very well. And then the following year, or maybe even 2 years out, you may be entering into drought conditions, or maybe there's a wildfire or something else that's limiting the generation of the resources. And that compliance periods really allow for managing those fluctuations with more flexibility over a long period of time, and they're still while increasing the procurement of the GHG-free resources. So you can see on the right here, these are the actual RPS compliance periods. You can see the GHG-free resources increasing the procurement over time, but showing us 3 to 4 year periods for each of those periods. I guess this is over a 20-year time frame total. But AVA can apply a similar approach for our voluntary procurement targets with the same 3 to 4 year procurement periods. And the methodology also provides a tool in managing our finances. It's in consideration of budget surplus or deficit projections. It really just creates a balancing mechanism across that period. One thing to note here is you'll see the renewables targets increasing over this 20-year period, but in 2030, the RPS target maintains a 60% target, so it will level off there, at least currently. It could always increase. There to still be an ongoing 3-year compliance period requirement beyond this 2030 date. It doesn't go away, it just kind of levels off. So, yeah, next slide. This is just intended to be a visual of how a compliance period can benefit an LSC. So just as a comparison here, I've got PG&E alongside AVA. We're 2025, we just started compliance period 4. So this is the entirety, or sorry, we just started compliance period 5. This is showing the entirety of compliance period 4, which ran from 2021 through 2024. You can see our eligible renewables for both kind of right below those blue year bars on top there. And you can see that for AVA, our renewables line up very closely to our internal targets. There's some excess in 2024, but it's fairly close for the other years. If you look at PG&E, their 2021 is more than double what they have for 2024. In 21, there was more stability in the market, certainly lower prices than in 2024. And having a compliance period really allows for flexibility to manage those fluctuations again over time. 2024, the RPS target ended at 44%. So you can see the average is on top there. PG&E's is below that, both as a total average and also for 2024 specifically. That's because in terms of RPS, in addition to the flexibility that a compliance period provides, the RPS program also has an additional benefit of banking, which is where an LSC can use excess RECs or excess generation from a a different compliance period and apply it to the requirements in a future to meet their state targets. But again, just showing that the flexibility that having a range of years can provide here. So next slide. It's going into a little more benefits of having a compliance period. Really, again, this is just providing flexibility to adjust procurement strategies based on factors like energy availability, which we talked about, but also contract availability, project development timelines. If you have, for example, a project that's scheduled to come online like in October of a particular year, and that project gets delayed by 6 months, for a single period target, you're stuck scrambling kind of the end of the year. You could be subject to higher pricing to try to make those targets, and having a period where you have that flexibility, you can kind of make that up in the following year without being really stuck, not strictly limited to that single year. So the previous slide, we were looking at the entirety of compliance period 4, those 4 years. This snapshot really focuses in specifically on 2024, which is the last year in that compliance period. Again, you can see PG needs renewables at 23%, AVA's at 61.8. Again, this is because PG needs utilizing their bank recs to meet the RPS compliance obligation for 2024. So again, the target for 2024 was at 44%. So significantly lower there for them. Just a note that power content will likely change significantly for 2025, likely with lower nuclear. This is due in part to the Diablo Canyon allocations that started in 2025. So you'll see a difference in the power content for both next year. Also, another note, we have hourly emissions accounting requirements that are coming into play, currently scheduled for 28 implementation. Those will also impact power content and procurement needs and costs in the future. Next slide. So some considerations before we go into the scenarios. Again, the 2028 24-hour emissions accounting methodology is expected to be implemented. There's potential that timeframe could be delayed, but it's currently slated for 2028. Still a lot of uncertainty as to how it's going to work, but we know that that's coming. Also, alignment with RPS. So historically, procurement in the last year of an RPS compliance period is more expensive than the first due to supply relative to demand. So that's one consideration to take into account. Staggering a compliance period with RPS could give us additional flexibility. So for example, if we used 2024 through 2027, we had some excess procurement in 2024 that we could then apply to a period and then align it at RPS at the end. Could also pose some additional challenges depending on timing. So if for example, our first year aligned with the last year of an RPS period, or if that 2028 accounting methodology were implemented in the middle of a compliance period. So some considerations to keep in mind. Another thing is that large hydro and nuclear primarily are sourced through allocations currently from PG&E. Large hydro specifically, we enter into an agreement year by year, so that's definitely subject to change. And then finally, with AVA's 100% clean target goal starting in 2030, there's not really a clear mechanism to balance procurement beyond 2030. All right, let's jump into some scenarios here. So next slide. So the first two scenarios are very similar. This first one here is 24 through 26. You'll see the board adjusted targets on that top green line in this table here. There's no change being proposed or at all to our targets. Really the methodology just allows us flexibility in meeting those targets and how we meet those targets. So again, this first scenario runs 24 through 26. It's staggered with RPS. The compliance period for RPS ends at the end of 2027. And that also would mean that the 2028 new emissions methodology implementation would be in the middle of the following compliance period. This really just takes the excess from 2024. You'll see that 15% in that second green line. It just splits it evenly between 25 and 26. So it reduces our procurement in those years, but again, maintains the targets. just allows us more flexibility in meeting those. And let's see, next slide, please. The main difference between scenario 1 and scenario 2 is that scenario 2 adds on 2027. So again, the board adjusted procurement targets remain unchanged in this scenario as well. It's just that the ending here aligns with RPS by adding that extra 2027, and it also would mean that the new emissions methodology that's supposed to come online or come on in 2028 would be at the beginning of the next compliance period, which would give us a little bit more time to incorporate any requirements there. So it's a 3-year versus a 4-year. I guess one clarification that I could give that's not really explicit here is in that last line. It says it's estimated to have potentially lower near-term savings. That really is dependent on how the excess is applied. So in this example, we have it split out as 5% over 3 years, but there's really no reason why the excess couldn't all be applied in 2025 and 2026, which is how I had it illustrated in the previous table. The focus really is on, whether it's a 3-year or a 4-year period, not on, how that's applied necessarily. It can go either way, and really, however it makes the most sense to manage the budget. So, next slide. Scenario 3 is a little bit different in that it doesn't use any of the excess procurement from 24 at all. So this is a 25 through 27 compliance period. It aligns entirely with RPS periods. As I mentioned, the compliance period 5, which just started at 2025 and it ends in 2027. So aligns with RPS, also aligns with the 2028 new emissions methodology implementation, which would, again, start the next compliance period. This particular scenario has no immediate savings in reduced procurement costs, though, because we're not utilizing the extra procurement from 2024. Again, those targets are unchanged in all of the scenarios, but just wanted to flag that. And then also just a note here that actual procurement levels will continue to be reported in AVA's annual power content label. That's an annual requirement that we have to continue regardless of whether or not we have a multi-year procurement methodology in place. And those multi-period averages will also be reported in the annual budget setting process. Next slide. So those are really the 3 scenarios that we're proposing. We want to seek feedback from the committee members on a recommendation for one of these scenarios. We intend to bring this to the board seeking formal approval on it. Just wanted to open it up for questions and feedback.
Any questions, directors? I recognize Director Sakakira.
Thank you. What are the implications of if it was a rolling 3-year period?
Do you mean like if we started one like 24 through 26 and then it was 25 through?
If the current year was always the last year of the 3 years, so you'd look back at the prior 2 years to get your average.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility also. That's not one that we contemplated in these scenarios, but definitely a possibility. I think it incorporates the same kind of overarching flexibility of being able to manage the targets over a longer period of time and manage those fluctuations in the generation. So I think it's definitely open to others.
I would just note.
Just trying to, or go ahead.
I would note a complicating factor there. Just for example, if you were to look at that right now, the preceding, say, 2 years, and then adding in 2025 as your first compliance period, you would have significant over procurement in the 2 initial years. And if you were to balance out to try to hit an overall average target, you would assume in this current year you'd be at a much lower level. If we were hitting the average precisely, because we were roughly 15% over procured the last 2 years, you could be 30% under procured. So, but it would average out to be meeting your targets. And then if you went another year forward, then your 15% over procurement would drop off. And you'd be significantly under procured then in 2025. Then that means in 2026, you would you would want to be, once again, 15% over procured to sort of balance that. Again, if your goal is to maintain your target levels on average. So I think it would create more volatility and variability if you were to look at doing that on a rolling average basis. So that would be one concern I have just off the cuff.
Yeah, I guess if you just aimed for or met the minimum, but I guess I was thinking it creates more flexibility if you face a particularly good or bad year and you want to take advantage of that, or on the bad side, whatever the opposite is, right? Go under. But then if you use that flexibility, then to your point, you've now locked yourself in to that number for 3 different compliance windows, essentially, because each of the next several years, you'll still be taking that year into account. If you were particularly low in particular, but yeah, I mean, it all makes sense to me. I think rolling is an interesting one to think about just because I didn't, yeah, I want to not have unintended consequences. And then of the 3 that were presented, that I think it was the first option, but the one that does allow us to take advantage of 2024 and then also staggers us so that we're not directly, I thought I saw something in the packet that was, and that you mentioned that, you know, if we're all competing in the same final year, that may affect the prices. So if our final year is not the same, you know, maybe there's some benefit there. So that was my initial reaction.
Director Brown, you're recognized.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation and breaking it down so comprehensively. I think my outstanding question is, from scenario both 1 and 2, what is staff's recommendation between those 2?
I would generally lean towards scenario 2. I think the benefits as noted in that slide have the benefit of the next compliance period, which would start in 2028. It lines up with what is anticipated to be a change in the emissions accounting methodology. So without knowing exactly what that methodology change will be, it's probably cleaner to have the start of a new compliance period start at that same time frame. So I think that's one key benefit. And then we would also be aligned with some of the RPS, which has both pros and cons. But I would say the emissions accounting methodology change would probably be the biggest driver for me to make that recommendation. With that said, I just want to note it's not a really hard recommendation. I think they're modest differences, and there's slight pros and cons either way. And I'd also say that I think there's, and this is just being speculative, there's a good chance that emissions accounting methodology change could be delayed just because there's a lot of complexity in that. And we've seen, you know, in other instances of implementation, things like that getting delayed. So even if you said we wanted to do it for that reason, it may not end up totally aligning, to be frank. So, but I would lean towards scenario 2 as the recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think that makes sense.
Any other questions? Okay. Any recommendations that you have for the upcoming meeting, directors?
Public comment, by the way.
Oh, yes, I do. Let me see if they have, oh, yeah. Yes, any public comments online? No, none in the room, though.
There are currently no hands raised at this time.
Okay, since there are no hands raised, we can go on to any discussion. Any suggestions or comments for the it's the July 16th meeting, right? So July 16th board meeting from FAP. Okay. All right, seeing and hearing none, I have one recommendation, Howard. I know that you mentioned that this is variable. It could change over time depending on other situations that might arise. I think this maybe you could make that recommendation based on what we've discussed here and what has come up, that so that when we go on July 16th, they know this is the staff's recommendation and why.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think as an informational item, we wanted to keep it a little bit open-ended and certainly speak
Wonderful.
to sort of generally our leanings. And for the board meeting, we'll absolutely bring up a formal recommendation there for approval. Yeah.
Great, great. And I just, for my own edification, is what exactly would make this variable or drastically change, if anything?
You mean the recommendation you're saying, or when you say what would make what variable?
If anything changes, what would it be? Would we have to change these procurement methodologies? If anything changes in a particular year where it's maybe more than 5 to 6%, or what?
Are you speaking to the accounting methodology or just in terms of the actuals in terms of generation?
Just the, not the actuals, whatever could be in your estimation, what could change?
Yeah, I'll speak to two things. One is the intention, we've kind of laid out the over under procurement sort of levels and actuals for what we would generally target. The benefit of this methodology, of course, is the numbers will certainly actualize in a different way. So we may target for 2025, as an example, being at a 76% level. We'll probably not hit that perfectly, and this will give us the flexibility historically where we want to be very conservative because we don't want to miss our target at all. We've ended up being quite over procured in a number of years. So this will allow us to take a little bit more risk and say, great, like we're really targeting 76%, and we're going to try to be as precise with our estimates as possible to hit that number. But that means, of course, we may end up at 74% and miss our intended target. But because we'll have a multi-year compliance period, that will allow us to take a little bit of that estimation risk, because then in 2026 or 2027, we can further balance that and know that, well, great, we have another year to kind of work at that and make sure that we can continue to work through that variability. So these numbers here, of course, are just sort of, if you were to sort of spread the over procurement out over the years evenly. That will not be how it actualizes, of course. So that's part of the variable nature of what we're talking about here.
I appreciate that. So if you are over procured, say in, just to make sure I understand what you've just said, if we are over procured in 2025, you could balance it out with 2026.
That's exactly right.
And
so I think for this particular scenario 2, what we're saying is it's a 2024 to 2027 procurement period. And so we have in that slide on the top line our board approved targets that were originally annual targets. So on a one-off basis, that's your target. If you hit it, or quite frankly, if you miss it as well, like the number is the number, that's the target. The following year, clean slate, that's the new target, hit it, and we've always, of course, hit it and exceeded it because, as I noted, we were conservative. We don't want to miss that target. Right. This methodology will allow us to say, great, well, maybe we over procured or we under procured. So we'll look at over a period of time, ensuring that on average we're hitting our target. So that will allow us a little bit more precision in terms of how we hit that number.
And maybe a slight flexibility too?
More flexibility and also some budgetary benefits, we think, because then you're not always just over procuring. You allow yourselves to under procure, knowing the importance of decarbonization and continuing to procure clean energy for our agency. We've been very conservative, but this will give us a little bit more comfort level to say on certain years you can under procure. That will be what we're trying to do in order to balance out the average, and that has the benefit of helping to, of course, manage some of the financial volatility as well year to year.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So we can move on to the next item if there is no further discussion. Seeing none, we can move on to item number, well, we are not doing item number 5, so we'll move on to item number 6, fiscal year annual audit preview. It's an informational item, and who is presenting?
I can present, or Rusty?
Yeah, or I'm ready to. I'll go ahead and take this one, Jason. Maybe
Fantastic.
we do the last item. That would be great. So I'll go ahead and get this one started. Wait till Raisa gets the slides up.
The slides are up currently.
Oh, good. So I'm missing them. Okay. So, okay, with AVA's fiscal year ending on June 30, we are starting the annual audit process that we typically do. AVA has some contractual obligations and credit facility covenant compliance requirements. So we do need to finalize and provide audited statements. within 180 days of year end. So by the end of December, precisely December 27th, if we want to go the exact 180th day. We have our independent auditor, Vicente and Brinker, perform the financial audit to confirm the accuracy of our financial statements and accounting processes to make sure they conform to GAAP and GASB or governmental accounting standards. As a matter of board interaction, we have an ad hoc committee that we form from current members, and we'll meet with the auditors to allow for any questions or concerns the board has while maintaining its independence as well. The audit timeline has us bringing the results to the board in November, and that will be presented by our auditor well ahead of our deadline. And we will also use the finalized audit to bring forward any finalized allocations of revenue surplus based on the actual results of year end, June 30th, 2025. Next slide. So this is somewhat of an eye chart. I do apologize, but it is the timeline and tasks scheduled for the audit. We also may provide an audit update partway through to the board, typically in the September-October timeframe, if necessary. We did kick off the audit yesterday with the auditor, Vicente and Brinker. It says on our timeline there, the 11th, but we went ahead and got started yesterday. And then the rest of the timeline, you can kind of check on the different tasks that we're doing and then culminating in us in November, bringing it to the board. So various things like sending out bank confirmations, legal confirmations, and then any other audit documents. And then you can see the August ad hoc committee date, and then that'll be followed up by another one in late September, early October. Below the timeline, you can see the deliverables that will be included at the November meeting, the final audited statements with notes and the transmission letter, our budget to actuals for the year, net revenue allocations, and then what the balance is of our reserves and rate stabilization fund. And with that, I will open it up to any comments or questions.
Members, or directors, any comments, questions? Okay. All right, seeing none, I'll ask for public comment. Is there any public comment? All right.
There are no members of the public with their hand raised.
No members of the public with their hand raised, so we can move on to discussion. Any discussion on this item? Okay, it's an informational item. I have one question. The ad hoc committee, when are you going to be forming that?
I think we're in the process right now of speaking with the chair and the vice chair to identify those members. Yeah, so not fully finalized yet, but also trying to seek out availability from the auditor and our accountant as well. So it's the scheduling process.
All right. Okay, then we can move on. If there's nothing else, we can move on to the next item. You're going to present, Chief?
What's the next item?
It's the risk
Oh,
management.
No, this one is Ray.
Okay, all right. So the next item, I'll just make sure everyone knows, the fiscal year annual audit preview informational item.
That's what.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the updated energy risk management policy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Ray Dai. I'm the Market and Counterparty Credit Risk Manager at EVA. So today I'm here to present the proposed changes to the energy risk management policy. Can we go to next slide? A while ago, I presented to this committee the structure and content of the energy risk management policy and regulation and comparison between the two. Here, I just want to highlight the main difference of the two documents, because EVA has two risk management documents. One is the energy risk management policy, we call it like a ERM policy. The other is the ERM regulations. The policy focuses on high-level principles, while the regulations focus on detailed procedures that are implementable. So, for example, the policy only allows like a transaction of approved products, but it doesn't list what are the approved products. Those approved products are listed in the regulations. Another example is that the policy talks about segregation of duties, but it doesn't specify who does what. So those rules and roles and responsibilities of different officers are defined in the regulations. So next slide. So our first approved energy risk management policy by the board, board approved the policy, first policy on February 7th, 2018. And the board delegated a CEO and a ROC, the Risk Oversight Committee, to review and approve the ERM regulations to implement the policy. So in the past 5 years, staff and the ROC have been revising and updating ERM regulations to support EVA's transaction need and in the dynamic energy wholesale markets. So there's a need that we need to update and the ERM policy to ensure consistency and accuracy. So next one. So because the policy focuses on high-level philosophy and principles, so it doesn't require frequent revision and updates. That's the purpose. So with that purpose in mind, so we made 2 changes to the ERM policies. One is about the number of ROC membership and quorum. The current approved policy doesn't say anything about the total number of ROC membership, but it specifies a quorum of 3 members. So this is not this doesn't reflect our reality. So right now we actually have 7 ROC members. So our proposed change to this is just say that at least 5 ROC members and a quorum of being a simple majority. So that would make it at a high level and which is consistent with the regulations and our reality. The other area of proposed change is about ROC, the requirement of ROC report to the board. So the governance structure is like the EVA board designates the EVA CEO to organize and run ROC, and then EVA CEO reports to board. ROC doesn't report directly to board. The reason for this is try to keep the ROC as a committee that is not subject to Brown Act. This is per our council's advice. So to achieve this, the 3 conditions have to be met all. So one is that the board does not create the ROC through a formal action. Second is that the board does not appoint ROC members. Third is that ROC doesn't report back to the board, because these 3 conditions have to be met in order to keep the ROC as a non-Brown Act committee. Because if it's a Brown Act committee, everything needs to be public record, including some like confidential commercial deal, like a counterparty information. So we don't want that to happen. So these are the 2 meaningful changes that we propose to the ERM policy. Some other minor changes, including names and titles, are also necessary to reflect EVA's growth and organizational changes. For example, we propose change the executive director to CEO because there's no executive director title at EVA. And we changed the director of power resources to the head of power resources because the power resources department has grown quite a bit, and so the head of power resources is a high-level position. And then director of finance and admin to head of finance. So those are the examples of like names and titles change to just to ensure accuracy and consistency. So that these are basically the changes that we propose to make to the updated version of ERM policy, and we will present to the board on July 16th for approval. Yeah. So with that, are there any questions or comments on this item?
One final comment I'll just make is we view these as primarily administrative for the most part. Our intention is to likely put this on the consent agenda for July since it's a fairly packed agenda. So this is intended to be the preview with subcommittee for review.
Any questions from the directors? Okay, no questions. I have one, Howard. It says 4.3 article says the CEO appoints the members for the ROC. So that would include it says at least 5. Is there a maximum?
There's not a maximum, as briefly noted. We currently have 7, so it's just intended to sort of establish at least what a minimum body would be to ensure there's at least sufficient group of advisors there.
Right, and you state as what they are, which would be members including AVA management, participating jurisdictional representatives, which would mean one of the directors.
No, representatives from within the jurisdiction, but not a board member.
I see. Okay, great. That makes
We
sense.
have energy sort of experts that are sitting within ROC.
I
Legal
see.
counsel, energy markets experts. Such.
Very nice. So that makes much better sense. So it's like an advisory body.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and these are folks that have decades of industry-related experience.
Fantastic. I have nothing further. Any public comment on this item?
There are no members of the public with their hand raised.
Okay, any discussion on this item? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we can go forward to the next item, which is the updated energy risk management. Did we do this one already? Yes. Oh, this one. I'm one item behind.
The one pulled item really throws it all off.
Yeah. So the next one is the fiscal year 2024-2025 Q3 draft financial statements. It's an informational item.
Correct.
Will you be presenting or?
I believe so,
else?
yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so great, thank you. So this is our Q3 fiscal year third quarter financial statement ending March 31st, 2025. We typically bring this to FAP before putting it as a consent item for the board. So it was not available for the May FAP, which is one of the primary reasons why we're bringing it here today. As opposed to putting it on May board or June board. So if we could go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So this is essentially the statement of net position, which serves as our balance sheet. The interesting items here that I would point to is that, okay, so we do have in here our reserve funds, which are listed as under current assets and non-current assets under the investments line item. That is where our reserve funds are currently held. And then additionally, there is under the non-current assets and listed below the rate stabilization fund balance of 57.6 million approximately. I'm highlighting these because these are kind of key things that we are talking about through this committee cycle. And so those are the kind of key call outs on the balance sheet. If we could go to the next page, please. This is the statement of revenues, expenses, and change in net position. It essentially serves as an income statement. And the kind of key highlights there is that we had a total operating revenue of 198.5 million thereabouts, with total operating expenses of around 224. And then with some investment income, we get to a change in net position of a reduction of about 16.7 million, which keeps our net position at about 636 million. And those are kind of the key call outs on the statement. There's obviously a lot of information here. And at this point, I will open it up to questions.
Any questions from the directors? public comment?
There are no members of the public with their hand raised.
Okay. Any discussions, directors? All right. Seeing
Thank
and
you.
hearing none, that was quick and easy.
Yep.
So,
It's a good efficient meeting.
there you have. So the next item is the committee member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on the board agenda. Any requests? Director Sakakira, you're recognized?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just want to say I didn't have comments on some of those items because they were very clearly presented in the materials that were shared beforehand and here. So, you know, it's not due to lack of engagement. I just wanted to thank staff for especially the quarterly updates. I haven't been on the committee for that long, so I'm sure we do it every quarter, but that was very clear. And then also the audit timeline, I really appreciated the Gantt chart. So we got the full detail on the dates to expect. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Director Sakakira, and thank you so much, staff. Great job in the clarity. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Director Brown, do you have a comment or a question or anything to add to item 9?
Yes, I just wanted to just shout out, I guess the launch of the Ava electric bike kind of item, and just was really excited to, you know, receive the communication, see some of the things online, and even the opportunity to share out at a town hall that I was attending, and then also during a panel discussion that I was on today. And it just really piqued a lot of interest with community members, kind of young and older alike. And so I just wanted to make sure I shared that. It's just been really good to share with community members.
Thank you so much for that share, Director Brown. I do agree that's a great program, and I've also been sharing it with the community members, and they seem to be very excited. They just need to understand the nuances about the income levels. So any further comments, questions? If there's nothing further, we can adjourn. It is now 4:30 p.m. Thank you so much all for attending. The next meeting will be held on Monday, September 8th. Please mark it on your calendar and so that we can have quorum. Thank you so much, everyone. Good to see you all.
One really quick comment on the adjournment is we did note a different address. This space is, we're gonna do some tenant improvements for the next 2 months. We hope it will be completed right around that time, but we do have that backup space. That's gonna be the same space as our next board meeting as well. But just wanted to highlight the next FAT meeting in early September will be at that other space. It's in downtown Oakland, so not very far away, but should be good space for us.
So if you're attending in person, the address is on the agenda. It's the Rotunda Building, a large conference room at 300 Franco Cava Plaza in Oakland. And if you're attending by online appearance, then of course no changes necessary. So, all right, we are adjourned. It is 4:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.